Namu Myoho Renge Kyo. It looks like I may have solved even more technical difficulties. All right, I'm doing something a little different. You've probably picked up on it in a recent video. I actually went to another sutra, the Lankavatara, and read some excerpts from that. I'm thinking, and I want your input on this, but because my whole mission, my whole idea behind this channel is to make the teachings of Nichiren and Buddhism in its entirety more easily accessible to people of my own time, in our vernacular, in our familiarity with life and all of its attendant foibles and activities. Things change, everything changes. That's a constant, if you will, in Buddhism, that everything's always changing. So in our time, I want to try to walk through with whatever vernacular and language that I understand to make some of these more complex ideas easier to perceive and digest and investigate, so on and so forth. So in that, I'm feeling a really strong need as I read, and we've done quite a few, I've done certainly several go-shows so far. There are a great many more. And although I've dedicated some playlists to like the Lotus Sutra and all the chapters of the introduction and the outro and the actual chapters of the Lotus Sutra one by one, which was helpful for me. Hopefully it helps you. I've also done other videos on the Vimalakirti and the Lankavatara and other sutras. The wealth and depth of go-shows, however, of Nichiren's is occupying almost all of my time now because it's so voluminous. But I think, and I hope I haven't done a disservice by not doing this before. I've tried to include, but I want to be more integrated in my reading of the go-show, even just for my own practice. And when, as I read this next go-show here, Reply to Sairen-bo, he drops a reference, like he often does, or many references, to a specific chapter of the Avatamsaka Sutra, the flower garland or flower ornament. It's known by Kigan, it's known by many names, but it's the first set of teachings of Shakyamuni following his own enlightenment. And as we know from historical accounts, he only expounded those sermons for a few weeks. And then he kind of put them aside and sort of started over in his teaching career. And for 40 years, he basically broke things down into levels until he then ultimately produced the Lotus Sutra as his culmination, and the Nirvana on his deathbed, kind of referring back to the Lotus and how to continue practicing. I say all of this because there have been many groups in the 20th century who have seized upon the Lotus and Nichiren, and in an authoritarian way, and this is the way organizations work, they've sequestered that thinking, and they actually admonish you for studying outside of the Lotus Sutra or outside of the Gosho. They just don't want you to do that because they lose control of your thinking, and they have all sorts of excuses for that. They don't want you to go astray and all of these kind of things, like we're just not capable. Well, if we're all capable and inherently enlightened, then why wouldn't we be capable of study? So that really obviously bothers me, right? And so in the midst of this go-show, he's going to make that reference to the Dharma realm. And I'm going to jump over to the Dharma realm portion. Actually, the Avatamsaka is so massive that it's separated into books, if you will, and the final culminating book of the Flower Garland Sutra is the entry into the Dharma realm, or the realm of reality, and we'll talk about what that means. And I'm just going to jump over to it because I think it's important for all of us to understand that although the Lotus Sutra is the culminating teaching of Buddhism, there are two key shattering components of the Lotus Sutra, and this is what Nichiren talks about. The lifespan chapter we just got through talking about is a major bomb, okay? But all of the concepts in the Lotus Sutra, if you've found through your own reading that it seems to just churn through all of these names and ideas like just because it has an assumed knowledge base, but doesn't really say that to you. It just leaves you kind of, well, it's kind of like reading a book on quantum theory. If you don't have some basis in mathematics, unless you're reading a gifted writer who can make it relatable, which is what we're trying to do here, reading a text on quantum mechanics is going to leave you stranded a lot. And I have a feeling this is what happens when we read Nichiren or the Lotus Sutra. There's a lot of assumed knowledge there that we just don't have yet. And so this is why, one of the reasons I'm a great proponent of study. But I think you'll find as we read this, and I haven't read it in a long time, and as I was rereading it in preparation for this video, it's just knocked me out that all of these concepts that certainly are in the Lotus Sutra, and certainly Nichiren uses all the time, which is why I'm going to do this, they've been there from the get-go. Right? That's often the case in any discipline, is that there'll be a great insight and a pouring out of information, but unless the other people have gone the path of enlightenment that you have, their perception of what that means is it's incomplete. It has no foundation. So this is the import of the Lotus Sutra, because it rests on the foundation of all of this other, and then it drops a couple of mind bombs, right? But those mind bombs are they're just air if you don't have this base of knowledge. So I think it's a good idea, as I read Nichiren, to pick out certain references he makes and go do a bit of a dive into those areas. If I think that those areas are so massive that they require another video, I'll either additionally do a video about that specifically, or I won't do much of a dive while I read Nichiren, and I'll dedicate all my focus to that specifically in another video. Maybe some mixture of them. So I want your opinion. Let me know what you think. We'll give this a good try this time. It may mean that there are more parts to this Go show, but that's because it's the nature of study. And so I've already burned 8 minutes, so I value your time, so that's why I do that. Okay, so let's get started. Reply to Sairen-bo. So I think it's important also, this is another letter from Sado Island. And Sairen-bo is a contemporary of Nichiren's, and here we go. Okay, this is an important, I should let you know that Sairen-bo is a former Tendai priest. And you know, Nichiren talks a lot about Tendai. Tendai, separate from Tentai, is a Japanese sect built from the teachings of Chi and Tentai, Chinese Buddhism. And he was also exiled to Sado Island. So that's an important point, is that we don't often hear when we study just Nichiren Buddhism, is that Nichiren wasn't alone in being persecuted. Other sects and teachers of those sects, proponents of those sects, were being exiled for being either not Shinto enough, or not shogunate enough, or not so on and so forth enough. And these were arguments made by other contemporaries who just had the ear of more powerful people in government, politics, right? So, uh, so it appears that Sairen-bo was well versed in Buddhist teachings. Um, Nichiren was receiving the government's pardon and moved to Minobu somewhat later. Sairen-bo was also pardoned. This is just the shifting politics and times, right? And so, anyway, I don't think I need to. You can read the history on your own. Please do so. Just wanted to set up that as Nichiren is talking to Sairen-bo, he's talking to somebody he respects, but he respects him in regard to Sairen-bo converting to the Nichiren's doctrine. And so Sairen-bo is doing what he can to give offerings to Nichiren to show his appreciation for his leadership and teaching. As Sairen-bo was quite highly regarded, even though he was exiled, he had some wealth, and but he wasn't, he wasn't a lord or anything like that. But he had amassed some valuable possessions, and he was all too eager to depart with those possessions and give them to Nichiren to help Nichiren in whatever way he could, if not financially, with things that he owned that might help Nichiren in his propagation. So you'll hear some of that in here and some encouragement. Without further ado, Nichiren says, "Take great care when you come to see me after dark. I will explain to you in detail the teachings regarding the benefits to be gained by one ordained to the highest stage of Buddhist practice. I have carefully noted the contents of your letter. I have also received safely the various articles that came from the capital, Kyoto. When I was living in Kamakura," and these were, again, possessions that Sairen-bo sent to Nichiren, so that's why he's referring Kyoto, because this is where Sairen-bo was from. "When I was living in Kamakura, such articles were a daily sight, but since having been exiled to this island, I have yet to encounter them. To come upon articles such as these on this tiny faraway island is truly most welcome. In your letter you mentioned that you became a disciple of mine and pledged to follow me at the beginning of the second month, and that from now on, though you may not measure up to the others, you would be most pleased and honored if I would continue to count you amongst my disciples." The sutra says, quote, "Those persons who had heard the law dwelled here and there in various Buddha lands, constantly reborn in company with their teachers," end quote. It also says, "If one stays close to the teachers of the law, one will speedily gain the Bodhisattva way. By following and learning from these teachers, one will see Buddhas as numerous as Ganges sands," end quote. A commentary states, quote, "Originally one followed this Buddha and for the first time conceived the desire to seek the way, and by following this Buddha again, one will reach the stage where there is no retrogression," end quote. Another commentary states, "In the beginning one followed this Buddha or Bodhisattva and formed a bond with him, and so it will be through this Buddha or Bodhisattva that one will attain one's goal." So, all of this, if you're familiar with Nichiren's writing, is in preparation or in setting the tone of his appreciation for this priest from the Tendai sect becoming a follower of Nichiren's and indicating that there's a karmic relationship between them. That's what all these references to other sutras are. Remember, mental exercises and these teachings, these sutras, although they sound like action or like fables or stories, they're conceptual perceptions of mind, right? When I consider these passages of the sutra and the commentaries, I wonder if you and I had not been pledged to one another as teacher and disciple from countless kalpas in the past. You and I have been born together in this defiled age of the latter day of the law in the country of Japan, in the southern continent of Jambudvipa, and with the utmost reverence we chant with our mouths Namu Myoho Renge Kyo, the ultimate reason for which the Buddhas appear in the world. We believe in it in our hearts, embrace it with our bodies, and delight in it with our hands. Has all of this not come about solely because of some bond of karma we share from the past? There it is. When I look at the situation in Japan, I find that the devil king of the sixth heaven has taken possession of the bodies of wise persons, transforming correct teachers into erroneous teachers, and good teachers into bad teachers. This is what the sutra means when it says, quote, evil demons will take possession of others, end quote. Although I, Nichiren, am not a man of wisdom, the devil king of the sixth heaven has attempted to take possession of my body, but I have for some time been taking such great care that he now no longer comes near me. Therefore, because the power of the heavenly devil is ineffectual against me, he instead possesses the ruler and his high officials, or foolish priests such as Ryokan, and causes them to hate me. So he's discussing the politics now, and how his scholarship has protected him from direct attack. Although he's been exiled, he's not exiled through any fault of his own. He's exiled because these negative forces have taken possession of these other people of influence in the government, and they're exerting force against him. Be that as it may, one should understand that at present, when it comes to teachers, there is a difference between correct teachers and erroneous teachers, between good teachers and bad teachers. One should shun those who are erroneous or evil, and associate with those who are correct and good. Even if their virtue is known throughout the country, and their wisdom is as bright as the sun and moon, one should recognize that teachers who slander the Lotus Sutra are evil teachers and erroneous teachers, and refrain from approaching them. A sutra warns on this point. Now, this is a quote from the Gosho, albeit a translation that could easily be used in the way I was saying in the introduction to this video. That people could read that and say, well, that means, you shouldn't read anything other than the Lotus Sutra, or Nichiren's writings on the Lotus Sutra, or maybe not even the Gosho, just read the Lotus Sutra. It's a very narrow view. That what's more correct to understand is the proper placement of the Lotus Sutra amongst the teachings. It is supreme. It is the king of sutras, as Nichiren says. What he's indicating is, as he has in many Goshos now, that other teachers relegate the Lotus Sutra to an inferior position and say that it's not important, that what it teaches is too lofty or too complicated or whatever. So that's a different point, right? A sutra warns us on this point, he says, quote, if there are slanderers of the law, one should not dwell with them. If one draws near them and dwells with them, one will be bound for the Avicii hell. No matter how honest and upright you may be, or how you may strive to be known as a worthy person in the secular or the religious world, if you associate with evil persons, then as a natural result you will find that you, in 2 or 3 instances out of 10, you are following their teachings, and in the end you too will become an evil person. Thus the commentary says, quote, though one may not be evil to begin with, if one associates with and is friendly with evil persons, one is bound in time to become an evil person oneself, and one's evil reputation will spread throughout the world. And, as an aside, we know this, that we can do all the good in any environment or discipline, but the moment we screw up, and we screw up in a way that has, and this is important, our intent. If our intent starts to be swayed toward something not honorable, man, that mistake will haunt you for a long, long, long time. And it'll spread faster than any good deed you've ever done. So this is a caution within the study of Buddhism, right? You have to be careful. You have to study with earnest. And you have to make sure that those you study with have the same intent, right? In the end, what we mean by erroneous and evil teachers are those priests in the world today who slander the Lotus Sutra. So specifically, the Nirvana Sutra says, Bodhisattvas have no fear of mad elephants. What you should fear are evil friends. Remember, we've talked about this before. Even if you're killed by a mad elephant, you will not fall into the three evil paths. But if you are killed by an evil friend, you are certain to fall into them. The Lotus Sutra says, quote, in that evil age, there will be monks with perverse wisdom and hearts that are fawning and crooked, end quote. As I've pointed out so many times in the past, when teachers such as Shanwu Wei, Qingkang-chi, Bodhidharma, Huiko, Shantao, Honen, Kobo of Toji, Chisho of Onjoji, Jikaku of Mount Hiei, or Ryokan of Kanto, read the golden words, quote, honestly discarding expedient means, I will preach only the unsurpassed way, they take them to mean, honestly discarding the true teachings, I will preach only the expedient teachings. When they read the passage that says, among the sutras, the Lotus Sutra holds the highest place, they take it to mean, among the sutras, it holds the lowest place. And when they read, among those sutras, the lotus is the foremost, they take it to mean the lotus holds second place or holds third place. That is why I describe these various priests as misleading and evil teachers. So he's kind of nailed his rhetoric down on this. All of this is to point out the importance of picking good teachers, good friends, good people in your environment that support your desire for your Buddha nature, your Buddhahood, right? But it holds true in all of life, doesn't it? Those that I call correct and good teachers are persons who take Shakyamuni Buddha's golden words to mean just what they say. Namely, that the other sutras represent expedient means, and the Lotus Sutra represents the truth, the clarity, the reality, the realm. We're going to get into that. In this connection, you should consult the Entering the Dharma Realm chapter, the 77th volume of the Flower Garland Sutra. The Lotus Sutra states, a good friend is the great cause and condition by which one is guided and led, and which enables one to see the Buddha and to conceive the desire for supreme perfect enlightenment. So, this is where I'm going to jump out of the Gosho and go over to the Avatamsaka, specifically the chapter or the book he references is here, Entering the Dharma Realm. I'm going to mark this so I know where I left off. Doing my housekeeping right in front of you. Now, as we jump into the Avatamsaka, I was really impressed as I read this again, because it's been a while. At the nature of time in cosmology in Buddhism. It's fascinating. And I'm not going to read this word to word. I just captured a lot of highlights. I encourage you to read it if you can. I think you can find some translations online. This book is not that easy to find anymore. There it is, so you can see it. Okay. So I'm just going to read some of these, and I'll ad-lib where I feel I need to. First of all, I guess you should know this is a story of a young man who's searching for how to attain his enlightenment. And basically, all of this dialogue of entry into the realm of reality is what it's called in this translation, is his travels from teacher to teacher to teacher to teacher, 53 captured in this book, different teachers that all show him different aspects of behavior and mind that will help him to attain Buddhahood. You could say that this book never gives up the way, because it has all these prescriptions for the way. So this is one reason why the Lotus Sutra is considered accommodating, because it is the Lotus Sutra that gives you the expeditious, simple, easy, universal way through the Daimoku to attain your Buddha nature. All of these prescriptions are very wordy, very long practicing and methods of mental focus. But in that dialogue, there are little jewels of wisdom in here that really, I suppose there's a bit of a selfish component to this. I realized as I was reading this that I use a lot of these words in my analogies, and while I'm talking to you about these different sutras and Nichiren, and as I reread the Entry into the Realm of Reality, which has been years since I read it, I found a lot of the rhetoric that exists here, as I was saying earlier, from the get-go, and so that you don't think that these are all new concepts, or that here me, Sifu Sylvain, is the owner of all of this great wisdom. I'm simply a vessel for it. And that is bodhisattva behavior. I'm trying to get out of the way of the teachings. And as I read these, I see things and I think, man, okay, start reading. What was the reason for that? So there's a lot of, everybody misunderstands, and this is the reason for that. People could see clearly to this, but they couldn't see that. This is the reason for that. So this is the kind of the format. And so in one of these responses, pervasive all the world, the display of Buddhas, the array of all Buddha lands in one body, the Buddha's display of the reflections of all phenomena in a single atom. The word atom. The Buddha's display of the succession of all Buddhas of past ages in one pore. The pore like skin pore. The Buddha's illumination of the stream of atoms in all the worlds with a single beam of light. The Buddha's pervasion of all Buddha lands with clouds as numerous as atoms in all the worlds emitted from one pore. And the Buddha's display of the ages of becoming and decay of all worlds in a single pore. So this is a reference to, you've heard me talk about quiescent energy, right? And we're going to get to that. He's almost the same words. This idea, and what I want to point out is the time component in it. Because as you read through here, there'll be discussions about the dust particles of things, right? So in 2,700-year-old science, there was a space, an ether of sorts, quiescent energy. And within that ether, within that space, that quiescent space, were things, manifestations of things, what we would call particles today, right? And particles in science aren't really necessarily hard things. They are measurable conditions and tendencies. Very Buddhist. They just use different words. And so in literature, in the Buddhist literature, you'll find that the reference to these dust particles is not only their size. Here's the fascinating thing, is that they claim in these old documents that these same particles of dust, wherever they are in the cosmos, are containers of time, if you will, that are at one time part of a star, another time part of a planet, another time part of a tree, another time part of you, and that because of the conservation of matter and the conservation of energy, these are scientific terms, engineering terms that we use today, not used then. What they use the concepts, though, to indicate that that same particle, that same dust particle that existed in a universe, or let's just say in a star, that now, when you look up in the night sky, you see light from a star that's no longer there in many cases. That star's been extinct millions of years, but the light from it is still traveling, and we see it today like a time machine. We see back to when that star existed. We see the light from it, right? So 2,700 years ago, the dust particles that make up your very body are the same. Not new, not created, not different. The same particles of dust that once were part of that star which no longer exists. You see the conservation of energy and matter here. So Buddhism is saying that every particle of dust that we experience or can fathom today with our minds has always been here. And it's just in different form, different accumulations. Try to grasp that, because that's the fundamental thought behind 3,000 realms in a single thought moment. That's the fundamental thought behind all of this is fleeting. It's ever changing. You may be made up of unfathomable, uncountable numbers of these little dust particles, but when you're gone, those dust particles will be part of the earth, which will then in time become either part of a tree and will go in the air and may go into the atmosphere and may transcend the earth altogether and be part of the solar system and join in to be something else. Anything. That's not reincarnation. That's a realization that everything, down to the smallest particle, beyond the smallest particle, right? The boson, the Higgs particle, the field, quantum fields. These are always extant. They're never static. They're constantly changing. And anything we perceive as new is an illusion of our own making in order to perceive it. But everything's constantly altering itself and becoming something else. This perception, it can, if you think about it for a long time, it can either hurt your brain or exalt and just what we would say, blow your mind, right? It can expand just getting a glimpse into that perception, what that looks like. This is our path to awakening, the Buddha mind. To perceive this simple thing is incredibly difficult because we're things. We have tendencies and conditions, and those tendencies and conditions are indicative of our suchness. I've said in the past thingness, but that's not, it's more a suchness, a way of transgressing time with certain parameters, tendencies and conditions. This is a suchness. And what Buddha is the suchness of this pre-manifestation, and as well as the process of it, and that it's constantly ongoing. In each discrete moment of existence is the process of life, is the ultimate truth, is the ultimate nature of all things. And this gets condensed very kind of rudely into oneness and all of this kind of stuff. Those words are just, they're such shortcuts that you miss the entire gamut of what it indicates. You really have to study to get this. And I'm fascinated to see these quotes. Mountainous clouds of jewels resounding with the practices of enlightening beings, showing the images of past efforts of all Buddhas, and mountainous clouds of the finest jewels, reflecting the summits of enlightenment of all Buddhas, all these clouds as numerous as atoms, in untold Buddha lands, filling all universes. So We talk about the multiverse in science these days. Well, they were talking about it 2,700 years ago. The great disciples, however, Shariputra, Madhyayana, Mahakeshyapa, Revata, Subhuti, Aniruddha, Nandika, Kapi, anyway, all of these, and some of them have names that are long as paragraphs, and so on, did not see the transfiguration of the Buddha in the Jeta Grove, the adornments of the Buddha, the majesty of the Buddha, the freedom of the Buddha, and on and on and on and on and on and on. Why didn't the disciples see any of this? Because of lack of corresponding roots of goodness, for they had not accumulated the roots of goodness conducive to vision of transfiguration of all Buddhas, so on, and they had not established beings in supreme perfect enlightenment while they were involved in the world, and they had not installed in others' minds the determination for enlightenment, and they were not capable of perpetuating the lineage of the Buddhas, and they were not engaged in the salvation of all beings. And here we see the exhortation of Bodhisattva practice. In the very first teachings, they did not know the source of the great vow of enlightening beings. Myoho Renge Kyo. Because of that, those great disciples who were the best of the best did not see the miracle of the Buddha, did not hear it, know it, realize it, penetrate it, did not fix their minds on it, did not notice it, did not focus their attention to it, did not observe it, did not examine it, did not reflect on it, did not contemplate it. Why? Because that is the sphere of Buddhas, not the sphere of disciples. So if you want to know what attitude, what thoughts should be in your mind when you chant in front of Gohonzon, that's it. Right there. You want to separate yourself from being a disciple and revealing your Buddha nature. There it is, plain English. Know it, realize it, penetrate it, fix your mind on it, resolve. Notice it, focus their attention to it, observe it, examine it, reflect on it, contemplate it. This is why I say when you don't know what to do and you're chanting in front of Gohonzon and you're just hearing yourself chant and your mind is wandering around, focus your attention on Myoho in the middle of the Gohonzon and demand to unite with your Buddha nature. Demand to experience it, know it, penetrate it, contemplate it, fix your mind on it. That kind of determination, ichinen, if you will get result. I guarantee you, you will vibrate with it. That knowledge did not belong to them. Why? Because they were emancipated by the vehicle of hearers. They had realized the path of hearers. They had fulfilled the sphere of practices of hearers. Right? This is learning, the world of learning. They were fixed in the fruits of hearers. Hearing, right? That's the sharakas. They rested on the knowledge of the light of the truth. They were fixed at the limit of reality. They had gone to the state of eternal peace. They had no thoughts of great compassion and had no pity for the beings of the world. They had accomplished what they had set out to do for themselves. These are the practitioners of teachings where the highest form of enlightenment is an arhat. It's a selfish practice. It's a practice, and it will get you somewhere, but it won't get you to supreme perfect enlightenment. You have to include others, and here it is in the very first teachings of Shakyamuni. Here's another one. Why? They were inimical to omniscience. Their eyes covered with the rag of ignorance, and they had not clarified the eye of unobstructed knowledge of enlightening beings. And they did not realize that all things interpenetrate. which is how they could have seen the miracle produced by the inconceivable power of the Buddha's concentration. Interpenetration, that's a word they use to describe what I was saying earlier, how all these atoms, although we know there are smaller particles than atoms, in their examples, dust particles, atoms, all interpenetrate. You are a sun, you are a moon, you are a galaxy, you are a universe, you are empty space, you are all of it. Because all of it has been what you are made of right now. And see, time falls apart in that mindset. Time ceases to be important in that mindset. And that colors all of these thoughts of birth, rebirth. Those are momentary perceptive things. Let's go on. This is just, it's amazing when you read this. Setting on lotus thrones, having come to the, not resting on anything, not grasping, free from falsehood, without abode, with unattached minds, dispassionate, set on the reality realm. So this is what I was going to say about the Dharma realm. What is the Dharma? The Dharma is the nature of reality. What is reality? That nothing exists in and of itself. Everything is transient. What is amazing is this whole mechanism of transience. The process, that's the truth. That's the Dharma. That's the Buddha wisdom. That's the Buddha mind. Exemplars of knowledge, great heroes with unshakable, adamant minds. In the midst of unperishing truths, they make a show of nirvana. They make a show of nirvana. So please stop thinking of nirvana as an ends and a means and a finite thing. It's a process. It's a show because it's unreal. Nirvana, the language around nirvana says it's an ending. It's a culmination. It's a termination. But it's not. It's just a transmutation. It's just a show of how nothing is permanent. Everything is interdependent. They have come together from countless worlds in the 10 directions, come to the Buddha without any notion of duality. Buddha is not finite or infinite. The great sage has transcended finitude and infinity. You see, again, they're pointing. The idea of finity and infinity is still a materialistic thought. It's still as attached to a thing and not a thing. Buddha is not about thingness or not thingness. It's about this process of thingness and not thingness. It's about this constant transmutation of energy. And here it is. It's in the Avatamsaka. Like the atoms of all the lands are the oceanic Buddha lands on a single hair tip. Surrounded by a circle of enlightening beings, there Buddha rests on the throne of the enlightened. In the ocean of Buddha lands on a single hair, on a lotus throne, at the site of enlightenment, extended throughout the cosmos, the guide is seen at the trees of enlightenment. Like the atoms in all the lands are the Buddhas assembled on a single hair. Surrounded by a host of enlightening beings, they expound all good actions. Buddha sits in one land, pervading all lands. Endless hosts of enlightening beings go there from everywhere, and on and on and on and on. Pervading the refuge of the reality realm, they constantly emanate a cloud of bodies, many as atoms in all lands, with the rain of truth for enlightenment. It's very poetic and it's very beautiful, but I hope you can see the amazing perception of the cosmos and the engine that is this whole process of life, not just of life of you and me, or animals, or trees and plants, but the universes themselves. One of the teachers, Manjushri, that Sudhuha, what is his name? Anyway, this young man who's looking for guidance and enlightenment. A man or woman setting out on a great vehicle imbued with 10 indefatigable determinations will enter the stage of realization of thusness, to say nothing of the stage of enlightening beings. Why do they keep calling them enlightening beings? Because they're bodhisattvas. They're not enlightened beings, they're enlightening beings, because their function is to enlighten everyone. As the power in my own mind, my will for enlightenment is firm and unbending. As in your mind, O goddess, so in mine, this determination now spontaneously arises. This is the fusion. And who's he talking to? You wouldn't think it, but he's talking to an enlightened being who is a woman. Right? You hear so much about women can't attain enlightenment. Here, this boy is talking to an enlightened woman. So from the get-go again, I mean, he caused a lot of problems with these sermons. That was hard to accept back then. And just one more I'll finish with. As I carry on the practice of enlightenment, may I see the inconceivable Buddhas sitting among enlightening beings in the lands as numerous as atoms they are in each atom. And read that again, just the last two sentences. In the lands as numerous as atoms that are in each atom. As much as I try to ad hoc analogies to explain to you what I've been able to glean in over 40 years of practice, and reading constantly, chanting, trying to understand what I read, I can't manage to come up with better verbiage than that. But I think it's important, critical perhaps, to understand that this isn't my opinion. This isn't new ways of looking at things. That's 2,700 years old. What is new, relatively new, is how to understand how to get to that point, how anyone can. So you don't have to be an astrophysicist to begin to understand this. It may even get in your way because it's divergent, right? Scientists often want to know things for the sake of knowing them. The point is not knowing them, but the point is to expand your concept of life, of everything, of the nature of all things, to participate in the observation of that flow of constant change. How do we get into that mind realm? That is the real reality of Buddhism. This isn't it. This is temporary. This is ephemeral. This is just happening in our experience in this brief lifetime that we have. But this process is not finite. It's not infinite. It just is pervasive. It's all right. I guess with that, before I continue, we'll get back to the Go Show here in part 2. But with all of that, I think I've kept your attention long enough. Thank you so much for participating. I hope this touched a chord in you. If it encourages you to do more reading, more research, because it's fascinating stuff. It really is. please do so. Report on it. Talk about it in the comments. Talk it amongst yourselves. Not that this need be a forum, but we are a sangha. So if you find jewels of knowledge that you want to share, please do it. Share them with me. Use these comments, this channel, to put that out there so other students can go, I didn't know to look there. Wow, that's really great. That's what we're doing. We're increasing the depth of our understanding so that we can we can unlock our Buddha nature, our Buddha mind, so that we can see with entire freedom this amazing process of life. It's so humbling, and at the same time it's so exalting. Wow, I'm in it. How amazing is this? Namo Myoho Renge Kyo. I won't go on any further. Thank you again. If you can, Patreon or PayPal me /Sifu Sylvain. Otherwise, just keep watching. You are my inspiration. Thank you so much. Namo Myoho Renge Kyo. See you soon.